Super excited. Second time on the show today. I have Hamza. He is breathesober.com. So it's breathesober.com. Now, guys, just because you heard the word sober, you're like, well, I'm not an addict. So this podcast isn't for me. We believe addiction at its core is a spiritual disconnection. And most, I would say 99.9% of us have some form of addiction in our life because we have a spiritual disconnection. Hamza, why do you feel, and I want you to kind of define this, what is the spiritual nature of addiction?
So the spiritual nature of addiction is that basically addiction, when we find ourselves in an addicted place where there's a part of us that wants to change, but the addiction is sort of strongly holding us down, that is another way of saying that we are operating in survival mode most of the time. Fight, flight, or freeze. The outlook of life that we have, very depressing, very dark. We're also very low on self-confidence. Like we've tried several times to change our lives and failed and come right back to the same place. And all of it is, you have to understand that we are energetic beings, magnetic and electromagnetic, right? So there's electricity within us. There's magnetic energy within us that comes from our heart, comes from our emotions. So what it does is that when we're in a state of addiction, our creativity is blocked. The energy of creativity, the energy of flow, of presence, and of power, all of this is constituting to a dysregulated nervous system, which essentially means that you cannot create a new reality from a dysregulated nervous system, especially one that is stuck in the past.
Do you feel like whenever you look at spiritual disconnection and there's this void, and I know it could be a void of somebody's purpose, their wholeness, a connection to something that greater. And I think a lot of people, especially younger people, and I know you talk to them, hundreds of them, maybe thousands, something greater should be. Like I have this, whether I'm scrolling on Instagram, we're talking about this off air. When I'm scrolling on Instagram, I have this, that something greater should be in my life. I don't know what it is. There's this void. So I'm going to numb the pain through drugs or alcohol. Does that make sense?
Right. Oh, percent. You've just hit it on the head. So what that void is, that greater. Now, this could be one of two ways. One thing is your true purpose, right? So when you look at someone like me, for example, I am truly living my purpose, but I can also find myself in that mindset of it's not enough. I want more. Mm-hmm. Right. And then same goes for just even before this, I was firmly stuck in the idea that what I have today is not enough. I'm not happy with this. I need more. Therefore, I have to work harder and I have to make all these changes to my life. But that's just it. Nothing will change until we accept the fact that everything is the way it is and it's just fine the way it is. And we just have to accept that it is okay. So that's where the concept of gratitude comes in, because when you're grateful, your glass is half full. When it's half full, you're not focused on all the lack in your life. You are focused on what you do have and appreciating that. So it's a mindset shift. And this is one of those shifts that they don't teach you in school.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And a lot of people try to approach this from a method to try to break the cycle. And I get that. And we talked about that in the first episode. We got into the practical aspects of how to handle that. If you have this urge on the weekends to go out drinking, we went in detail on that. But it's a lot of the programs don't address the spiritual gap. There's no external method.
Yeah. And one of the major concepts that I built my entire program and method on is that anything you want, you can achieve, but you can't achieve everything, right? So what does that mean? That means your energy will flow in the direction that you put your attention to. So there is significant science that has proven that your attention is what your perception, and your attention is what moves energy towards a certain thing. And within us as human beings, there's, the concept of God. We're all familiar with that. But there's several different types, right? There's several different religions, several different stories. But what is common among all of them is that there is a higher being that created everything, and it's ever present, and it's always looking, and it's always there. Mm-hmm. That same energy, and this is gonna cause some cognitive dissonance, but you are God. You are that energy. And what that means is if source is an ocean, we are one drop, but it still doesn't mean that we are different from the ocean. It just means that we're just a tiny little drop, meaning the same consciousness that is within us is the same source that powers the universe, the creator, the all-seer. It's the same source that we are all connected to. And this has been proven specifically by the work of Dr. Joe Dispenza in terms of the quantum world, the quantum field, and how we can connect to that. And in order to connect through that, we have to let go of a lot of the three-dimensional ways of being, the materialism, the things, the houses, the jobs, the money, the clothes, all of that. We have to detach ourselves from that. And that's when we shift our focus inward. That's where meditation, breathwork, all those things come in. And once you do, you start to feel the energy moving. You start to feel things changing. And it's the regular practice of that that allows you to change who you are within and create a new reality.
Yeah, I want to get into breath work here in a little bit, but I want to stay on what you're saying here because I think this is so important. The body's energy has to be released in some format, and there's a lot of stored trauma. That's why people are drinking. How does the breath work and then also that energy release? How does it help that stored trauma release? And because I know breath work creates space, whether it's meditation, it could be a lot of different things. I like breath work because it's for me, my ADD brain, it seems to be something I can do that's more, how would you say it, more proactive than just trying to sit there and be still. But how do you create space for spiritual awakening to release the stored trauma?
Let's try to unpack this. It's a heavy question. So I'll try to do it justice. So guys, first thing we have to understand is that we are in a density, which is the third density, the third dimension. That is Earth. So physical matter, when you look at its foundation, it's still vibrating. So it's physical to the touch, yes. But there is a certain frequency, certain energy, there's a resonance within the particles when you zoom in. Okay. Same thing that makes matter, is the same thing that makes us. Now, what's different about humans is that we have 7 energy centers: the root, the sacral, solar plexus, heart, throat, third eye, and crown. Okay. The first 3 centers, the root, the sacral, and the solar plexus, are you could say, the centers that are associated to the third dimension. So all the emotion like fear, worry, guilt, regret, anger, trauma, these are, since they're functions of the first 3 centers, this is the energy that is often stuck in those first 3 centers. Now, if you're someone who is using alcohol as a way to cope with high stress, or it's just your habit, or let's say you went through a divorce 10 years ago and it was nasty and you're still sort of recovering from it, or say you lost a parent, or, those kind of things, when they happen, we are told by society that drink to numb yourself and escape, and it's glorified and all of that. But what that's doing is that energy, because you said energy has to be released. It cannot be destroyed. So the energy of your trauma lives in the first 3 centers of our bodies. Okay. Now, what happens is that because the word chakra means wheel means it's moving all the time. These first 3 chakras, they become blocked, and then the energy cannot go through to the heart, then to the throat, then to the third eye, and then finally to the crown. The crown is a few inches above the head here. And the reason for that is the 4 centers on top are connected to light, consciousness, love, and that source. Enlightenment, spirituality, and the first 3 are, reproduction, all that stuff, different emotions, the dense emotions that we feel. Now comes the question of how does breathwork release all of this? So there's a specific breathing technique that I've actually been doing myself since my kid has been born. High stress, what can I say? So we have a spinal column that holds the spine and all the nerve endings that are going into the spine. Okay. And there's fluid that is going up to the brain and then coming down and going up and down the entire spinal column. The technique, I don't have time to explain the technique, but what it is essentially you're contracting those 3 muscles, your perineum, your lower abdomen, and your mid abdomen, not your diaphragm, just your lower, mid, and your perineum. You're contracting these muscles to kind of breathe and suck the energy out through a straw. And you're leading it all the way up, the stuck energy from the bottom all the way up to your crown. And that is the process of releasing and creating that space. This process, the reason why it's so important is because every single person over my last 5 years that I've been doing this, every single individual, and including myself, we were all in the same spot, worried about life, so many problems, challenges, and drinking to numb ourselves from all of those is the same as burying your head under the the sand and waiting for the storm to go by. But that is what is essentially creating the problem. Now, what happens is when we feel these emotions, there is a certain chemical reaction that happens within different organs of our body that release chemicals such as cortisol when we're stressed, right? Such as adrenaline when we're anxious. And then the body remembers the chemical cocktail. And then it becomes addicted to those chemicals. That's where the thinking and feeling loop starts. We talked about this in the first episode as well. And now you can kind of see like there's a lot of like you can't explain the spiritual without the science, right? And that's what's so fascinating about this world. But coming back to this, your energy, the more sort of stay in that same cycle, you drink, you wake up the next day, the moment you wake up, you start thinking about all the things that you did the night before. What is that? That is taking your today's energy and shoving it right back into the past. So when you start thinking about it, your body starts releasing those chemicals. And before you know it, that same nervousness, the same anxiousness, the same stress, the same agitation, the same, oh God, I hate this. I just need to have a drink. That same cycle repeats itself. And this is the pattern that we have to interrupt. And this is where breathwork and the practice of using targeted breathing techniques to address each and every one of these emotions, this is how we do it. We release this emotion and then we teach you how to the electro and the magnetic, right? Whenever there is any kind of energy information exchange in our brain, neurons are exchanging electrical impulses. That's how energy gets transferred, right? Our heart, now here's a fun fact that I learned since I just had a baby. The heart starts beating 3 weeks in. When the gestation has happened. The brain starts about 6 weeks in the development of it. So technically, the heart came first. And not only that, it has hundreds of thousands of neurons that are present in the heart itself. And there is a heart-brain connection. There are several pathways that are connecting the mind and the brain, but 70% of them are going from the heart to the brain, right? So why is this important? This is important because when we talk about visualization, we talk about connecting to the quantum field. What is that? That is really just tinkering with your energy signature by way of how you feel inside to match the frequency of what you are trying to manifest. In simple words, when they say, okay, you need to visualize something, what's really happening is we are changing. There is an electromagnetic field coming out of us. It's about 18 inches ahead of us. So that's why, when somebody comes a little bit too close and you don't like their energy, you feel something, right? Or when you like someone, like when I hold my kid, it's like my heart starts melting. When you hug your wife or you hug someone you love, you feel something here. What is that? That is the north and the south pole of the magnetic field sort of coming into each other, the auras sort of interacting with each other. When we are drinking, that energy of light, that light field around us is dim, it's diminishing because of the low vibration emotions we feel, and we constantly riddled our bodies with stress and cortisol and all these different chemicals, right? So the practice of this is staying present, because when you stay present, you're bringing your attention into the present moment, and in the present moment, whatever you were worrying about doesn't exist. So that's how you're able to cultivate that energy again. And that's where your visualization and elevated emotions come into play. When you visualize the picture, so let's say, I am planning a vacation with my parents for a month. It's very expensive. So I have to visualize this and make it happen.
Right.
So when I visualize it, I see the picture that creates the electronic field, you could say. And then I match that with elevated emotions. How would it make me feel to spend a month with my mom and dad in Aruba? That's where we're trying to go. Okay. How would it make me feel? It would make me feel so happy. It would make me feel amazing. It would make me feel so good that I was able to do that for my parents. They were able to meet the grandchild, all that stuff, right? Because it's something I really want, something that I truly desire from the bottom of my heart. When I feel what it will be like when this happens, that's when I'm radiating positive energy. And that's when the electromagnetic field around me is getting stronger. And that's how we sort of connect with the quantum field and try to manifest whatever it is that we want. So in other words, you are stuck in the old mind. The old mind has become the mind of the body. You understand? Your body is craving those chemicals, and you will start to think about those same things over and over. And that is the thinking and feeling loop that we have to disrupt. Sorry, I know that was a long-winded answer.
No, that was awesome. I do want to talk about, because I know in early 2020 was the breathwork section that you had, when you were at your low point. And There's something that you said multiple times is this inward aspect, like turning inward. And I think we're always seeking something external for, to fix us, whether it's a pill, whether it's a bottle, whether it's, a relationship, whatever it may be. During that moment of, when you felt trapped by your drinking and you had that session, something spiritual happened to you. Can you kind of go into that a little bit about what you felt?
Absolutely. Very simply, there's an external world and an internal world, of course. And it's really easy to. So, my pattern was if so and so hadn't called me, I wouldn't have gone out and I wouldn't have ended up drinking. If so and so hadn't cheated on me, I wouldn't have been so hurt and I wouldn't have wasted a year of my life drinking so much. If my brother was kind or nice to me, then this or that. But everything started with if that, then this.
Mm-hmm.
That's wrong. Because the most important thing again, this is going to be a strange concept to comprehend. But whatever somebody says or whatever somebody does and how you react to it has everything to do with you and zero to do with them. Because
Mm-hmm.
what it is, so I'm a person, you're a person, we're having a conversation. You say something to me that I find offensive. Let's say you said something that's about my religion or something. And now I'm just like, how could you? Okay. Is it really that you said something ignorant about my religion that is now such a big blasphemy? Or is it really the fact that I'm unable to control an emotional impulse in me based on something that's based on an input that came from you
Right,
into me,
right. Yeah, that makes
right?
sense. Yes, yes.
So what you say is not in my control. How I react to it is 100% in my control. And
Mm-hmm.
that is what I realized in that session that, wait a minute, it all starts with me. When my kid says, I don't want to do this, and I'm standing and saying, how dare you say this? Is that about them or is it really about me? Like,
Mm-hmm.
why do I feel so triggered by what my kid said or what, you might have said or what somebody else might have done, right? And in the other sense of this is that it's very easy to place all the accountability and the blame to something external. Like, hey, this thing didn't happen, then I would be fine. I didn't do anything wrong, right? It's just because that this happened and that happened. And now I found myself in that same situation again. So the change from here was, okay, how much of this is my fault and how
Yes,
much of it
yes.
is of my own doing and how much of it really can change if I start thinking in a different way. And that's sort of
That's so
what
good.
started, that was the big bang of my revolution, you could say, in my life, where things started to shift. And the other thing I realized is that, again, the worry, the stress, the constant hamster wheel of what's going to happen now that I said this, is that person going to think or that person going to do? All of that, it goes away when you shift your focus inward. None of that exists
Mm.
there. And you have to find that quiet space because it's only until, because look, everything I just described, it only lives here. The memory of something that has an emotion attached to it, where when I start reliving the memory, the emotion comes back.
Right, right.
And once you get clarity on this, then anytime something crazy happens, or nothing crazy, anytime you need to self-reflect, you will then start to look for answers within you. And whatever comes up from within you is the true source of what's really going on. That's how I was able to address my root causes. That's how I was able to take complete ownership of the way my life was. And only then was I able to first understand that, hey, you did this to yourself. So
Mm-hmm.
there is no other person to blame. And then number two, okay, well, since you did this to yourself, now it's up to you to start working your way out of this. And that is what allowed me to take full responsibility for the way my life was. And that is then what allowed me a few weeks later to accept it all. To be okay with it all. It's the resistance. No, 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 no. It can't be. It can't be. It can't be. How could I be this alcoholic person? No, 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 no. Right? That resistance is what is siphoning your energy away from today into like the resistance. It requires energy. And the other thing is our brain, it has different levels of activity. Every time you are thinking about something, you are in beta. Beta is the wakefulness.
Mm.
When you are in a meditative state, you are in an alpha state. So sure, there's a little bit of correlation between the two where a thought might come by or whatever. But the moment you start fixating on the thought, analysis versus awareness, right? So when you start analyzing the thought, then your energy is going into the thought, which is raising the level of electric impulses being exchanged within your brain, because you're thinking, you're using it more, which then puts you in beta. When you're in beta, you're not in alpha, meaning you can only be in a meditative state when you are not in beta. So when you understand these things, it makes life so much more simpler, because now any problem I have in my life, I know I have the solution within me. I just have to find it.
I know a lot of your teachings, especially when it comes to the hard reset method, stem from, like, addiction stems from a lack of self-love. When you're working with clients, how do you cultivate self-love? Because for me, if you can't forgive yourself for the choices that you made under the addiction's grip, then, how are you going to even start to begin that inward healing, if that makes sense?
Absolutely. No, you're 100% right. The first step is forgiveness, because only then can you arrive at a place where you can accept things. First, you have to forgive and let go of those emotions. When I work with my clients on the self-love aspect, it's very practical. It's in terms of what is an example of self-love. So I'll give you an example. One example is when you make the mind-body decision that, okay, let's say somebody signs up for my program, they just made a big investment into themselves and now they're ready to take action, but then they don't take action. Or let's say one of the actions is, I'm not going to go out with my friends when they come calling. And the first time they call, you're like, oh, fuck it. Okay, I'm just going to go out. That is where you have to draw the boundary and tell yourself that no, this is bad for me. It does not serve me. And therefore, I must draw the line, as hard as it may be. I need to honor myself and say no. That's just one example. So self-love means doing the hard, boring, mundane things, such as doing breathwork and meditation every morning, and such as pausing and not reacting, such as sitting with your emotions, journaling your thoughts, all of this stuff. This is you have to stay accountable, and your self-love boundaries that you draw are around recognizing the things that put you in this position in the first place, and then removing them, which includes people, which includes habits, which could be anything that is not serving you anymore. That is the true meaning of self-love. And when we find ourselves in a place where we're drinking so heavily that things are a mess, how can that be seen as an action of somebody who loves themselves, especially when they know that
Yes.
this is something that is literally killing me, but I'll do it anyway? That's not self-love. So those are some of the mindset shifts that we have to work on in terms of letting people recognize, especially people with children. Because it's so easy to say, oh, my kids, I'd kill myself for them. Yeah, but will you live for them, man? That's the main thing, right?
Yeah,
Like,
that's the tough part. Yeah,
yeah.
it's because I think a lot of people don't feel like they have divine worth. Do you, and they don't know how to reclaim that divine worth that's in them if they don't have that teaching.
Well, that's exactly it, right? That's why I'm doing what I'm doing, because each one of us are these divine beings. We are all eternal, timeless beings from the spirit realm that said, you know what, 1987 seems like a good time for me to show up here and see what's going to happen. So we choose our parents. We choose when we want to be born. We choose this entire path because there is a lesson that your soul said, you know what, in this lifetime, this is what I want to learn and take with me. Because when you know everything, how can you grow? You know what I mean? So these 3D experiences we don't have up there. People who feel they don't deserve the divine whatever, that's crap. You are a divine being. What the matter is that you've lived your lifetime focusing all your energy on the stuff that's associated with the lower three centers. Materialism, your home, the way you look, the way, your house looks, the car you drive, the clothes you wear, the people you hang out with, the social circle you keep, the appearances, the who said, she said, the news, the world, politics, all of it. The first three centers. And all we really need to recognize is that there are four others that we're not using at all when we're stuck in that place. All you have to do is get a one release from breathwork. And I have so many people, even doctors that join my program, therapists that join my program, who know everything, but they don't practice it. And when they do, the first breathwork session, tears are coming down, people are having epiphanies, things are changing. And one person described it best, where when your toilet gets clogged, you take a plunger, right? So it's kind of like the same thing when the top of your head, you just take a plunger and you just suck all that energy out. And that's what breathwork is doing for you, because your breath is what moves your energy within your body through nadis, not veins. Nadis. Nadis are energetic channels for energy to flow. And it's like Drano. Like when your pipes get blocked, you're pushing it out. And the way out is here, speaking your truth. Whatever you feel inside, vocalizing it, right? So many people for the first time, they say, okay, when I finally said that, I need help, things started to change.
Right.
What is that? That's a vibration that's going out, right? How you feel inside. If you're feeling always low, that you're not worth it, your self-worth isn't there, self-confidence is low, then you're creating a weak pulse of an electromagnetic field. When you are connected to love and light, and when you realize that there is no right or wrong, and you're kind of just here to go with the flow and call it a day when it's time to go, then you start to release, and then the expansion starts to happen. And then your pineal gland, again, why is there fluoride in all of our water?
Yes, yes. In
There
Canada
is
and here.
everywhere. Even in Pakistan, man, it's the same thing. It's because somebody doesn't want us to know that there is a whole other action that is available to you, and nobody teaches us how to use it. And I mean, since we're talking about the masses, what is the masses' way of life? Go to school, learn. So you're already being conditioned. Morning to afternoon, you're working for something, someone, and that this is the only way to live. And then you buy a house. Now you have a mortgage. Then you lease a car. Then you have payments. And now you're like, shit, I have to work for the next 10 years to cover all this stuff. And then before you know it, your life is done. You spent your entire life stuck in the 3D. And that is precisely the problem. You will get depressed when you are being robbed of your natural urge to connect with nature, to put your feet in the soil and to feel the sun on your face and to be naked in the sunshine, man. Like
Have fun.
this.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
I want to get into Hamza because I think this is really important. Whenever you look at the mind, addiction often thrives in a restless mind. I believe that 100%. So
Yeah.
whenever you're doing breath work, meditation, whatever, and you allow that higher self, that inner wisdom that you possess, Sadhguru said, you don't need to read books. The biggest book is inside of you, and I truly
Yeah.
believe that. Whenever you're really being able to understand, you can start to develop like, okay, I'm restless. I'm feeling restless. Well, this is the beginning of the addiction. This is that cycle. I start feeling restless. Next thing you know, I look in the fridge and there's a beer, or I go, text my friends to see what they're doing for the evening. Explain the restless mind a little bit and then how breathwork calms that.
So the restless mind is a symptom of a deeper problem, right? So nobody ever stops to ask, well, wait, why am I restless? Right? Why do I feel this way? There's an incredible exercise that I use with all of my clients, which I'd love for everyone here to use as well. It's called the 7 Why exercise, which is very simply, when you're feeling restless, why do I feel restless? Maybe it's because I'm bored. Why are you bored? Because I have all these thoughts that keep coming and I don't want to feel them and I would rather do something else. Why? Why would you rather do something else, right? And then you kind of just get down to the seventh layer, which is always the layer of the subconscious. There's 7 layers of consciousness between the awareness, the 5% of the brain that we use. Now, for the person that recognizes this pattern, what you have to recognize is restlessness is another way of saying my sympathetic nervous system is turned on. My breathing is a little bit shallow. My body's a little bit tense. I'm restless and I can't focus on anything. The other thing is that is also, if you're jumping from thought to thought to thought to thought, and you're thinking about good things, then bad things, then some good things, then some bad things, and if you're kind of all over the place, your brain is creating what's called an incoherent signal. It doesn't really go anywhere, right? So this is where we call what I call the pattern interrupt. Is when you recognize that you're feeling restless, you want to change that, because that's what it is that is driving you to pick up a drink. You just want to change that restless feeling. It's not so much about, let me have my favorite craft beer. It's more about, let me turn whatever this is off so I can just relax. You can do the same thing with your breath. All it takes is 10 minutes and you do a few rounds. There's several different exercises, of course, on my pages, on my website as well, on my Instagram page as well. And the whole goal is for you to recognize that the anxiousness and the restlessness is simply just a symptom of your nervous system being switched on. And you have to dig. But if you don't want to dig, you just want to turn it off, immediately engage in some kind of breathing exercises. Alternate nostril breathing is fantastic. Right nostril, you block, left inhale. switch, exhale, inhale, switch, exhale. That's one round. Do 10 of these. And you will notice that within 10 minutes, your sympathetic nervous system has switched on. And now you're feeling relaxed. Now you're feeling calm. Now you're not so restless anymore. And you don't feel that same urge anymore. The key ingredient here is the desire.
Yes.
This can only work if you genuinely want a different outcome. If you tell yourself to prove to your friends that, yeah, look, I'm doing something about it. I'm doing something about it. But really, you're like, fuck it, I don't care.
Right.
Then it's not going to work.
I want to go into, because, you talked about the nervous system playing with the mind. I do think a lot of addiction comes from fear or unworthiness.
Yeah. Fear. What is fear? Fear is our body's way of telling us that there is something there, right? And what's interesting to know is that the energy of fear and the energy of excitement are the same. One converts to the other, right? So adrenaline junkies, let's take a look at their example. They've figured this part out. So the thing that you fear the most, and in my personal example, I'm always afraid of heights. We went to Whistler. There's the second tallest zip line in the world. I did it despite wanting to, not do it and being very, very scared. But I felt firsthand the energy of fear turned into excitement, and it was exhilarating. David Goggins is a great person to learn about this from. But fear, we are all conditioned to turn away from fear, to be scared from fear. When you fear something, don't do it. But what if I told you that whenever there's fear around something, that is your cue to forget about everything and dive right into whatever it is that makes you so scared? That is how you will realize that fear is really just a mechanism to make us aware of something. Self-worthiness. Again, self-worthiness is perceived from the output that's coming from the rest of the world. The metrics that we are all accustomed to: job, income, car, house, clothes, person, wife, right? Like all of these things. But if you recognize that this is all man-made stuff and the reality is that none of this stuff really matters, that is when you can truly liberate yourself and recognize that you are worthy. And regarding self-worth, if there is a being that knows everything, that loves us and created us in its own image, how can you not have purpose or worth? So it's only in your own head. And the self-worth part, you will realize that being alive is already a miracle. For you to be alive right here, right now, it's already a miracle. It's so many things have to go right for the egg to be fertilized.
Yes.
It is mind-boggling. One in a trillion chance that you became the consciousness that is in this body and not something else. So like being alive and being on this planet is the greatest gift. And unfortunately, nobody teaches us these things. And we're all so accustomed to. So in other words, the simple words, if you want to sort of change how you feel about yourself, you have to stop giving a shit. And you really have to just focus on you. And as long as you like who you are, and there's a big line over there, like a very big topic right there. As long as you like who you are, you'll always be in good company. And when you're in good company, it's easier to be yourself and to be true to yourself and not lie to yourself.
Yeah, because I think the response should be, in a perfect world, would be compassion, towards any of this, but instead it becomes the bottle.
Yeah. Exactly. Right. So compassion for yourself, compassion for every other being, and recognizing that all of this is a network that we are all a part of, and spend some time in nature. Be bored. Look within. Stop looking at the external world to calm something or change something within, because that again is just deepening the problem. So until we shift our focus inward, nothing can really change.
Yeah, I want to get into, this is a spiritual podcast and we talk a lot about spirituality, so we're pretty open about it. I know like my view of reincarnation is that we are put into this meat suit to learn a lesson. Whatever that may be, for 8 years, if we're alive for 8 years, or if we're alive for 80 years, it doesn't matter. There were lessons to be learned to evolve and, into our higher self. And I know a lot of spiritual traditions teach this. How does your view of addiction as a teacher, how did that, kind of go in that as how it taught you with your personal addiction, with alcohol? Like, what did it teach you? How was it a profound teacher for you? And then kind of explain that as the teacher to others.
Alcohol, the profound teacher that it was that only you have the power to truly change whatever's happening inside you, and only you have the power to make it way worse than it needs to be. And the difference between the two things is really just not having the courage to accept that, you know what, like this is just what it is. And I used to tell myself that I need to drink in order to be myself. I need to drink to be the real person because otherwise it doesn't come out. And there's hundreds of false beliefs that we tell ourselves. But the biggest teaching that I got from addiction is that your body's resilient. You think you're trying to kill it, but it won't die that easy. and and that it's always 99% of it is in your head. And if you can just work on that one part, everything changes very quickly. So that was the biggest lesson that I got from my years of sabotaging myself and making sure that I have something to think about the next day, which is going to keep me grounded in my current reality. I kept doing it to myself because it felt familiar, because alcohol was my friend, because I knew exactly how I would feel. And that familiar feeling, that dependability is what keeps us rooted in the phase of our life, the version of our lives that, it's not, what if alcohol isn't the problem? What if the problem is the version of you, the current version of you that is completely dependent on it and thinks that it's dependent on it, thinks that it needs it? That's the real problem. And I wouldn't have known that. I would not have known that had I not gone through my own addiction. I firmly believe that everything I went through, that's how I was able to accept it and be one with it. I wouldn't be the person that I am today if I hadn't gone through the ringer for those years to then be able to stand here and say, I know what I'm talking about. Right? So everything happens for a reason. And that's what allowed me to let go of all the pain and all the misery and all the shame and all the guilt and all the regret and firmly focus on the solution that I saw for myself instead of focusing on the problem.
Yeah, I know, like a lot of spiritual teachers, they talk about leaning into discomfort. And we have this messiness about us as about being human, and there's this chaos part of us that we don't want to look at because whether it's through Instagram or social media, whatever it may be, we have this perfection that we want to be perfect. And I know what you're saying. It's like for you, the alcohol made you feel cooler, made you feel more outgoing. You could get laid, all those different things. That's what the alcohol, makes you feel like you're doing. And so the teacher, I think, makes you realize that, and I know it can be brutal, but it makes you realize that there is a resilience in me. Like you said, your body's resilient, but there has to be the surrender and then understanding the power of vulnerability, if that makes sense.
That's exactly it. Look, we want control, but that's exactly, the universe says, no, you don't control anything. I do. Your job is to do what you think. I mean, it's the vulnerability part, the surrender part. So in AA, they say surrender to God, that you are powerless without God and that you will always be a victim of this thing. I didn't agree with that at all. What I think the real surrender is about accepting that things are the way they are and that the only way that it's going to change is when you start working on it. And that it's okay. The fact that you're alive, the fact that you still have all your limbs, the fact that, you can walk, you can do stuff, that's enough to be grateful for everything that you have. And it's only when we start shifting that mentality, then we realize that, holy fuck, life is great.
Yeah.
And you know what? It's great. It's fine. It's totally fine. Whatever. And I'm working on myself. And as long as, perfection, it's the pursuit of perfection, not perfection itself, because that doesn't exist, right? There's nothing perfect in creation. So why, like if something was perfect, then why would it evolve, right? So it's more about the surrender and the vulnerability. When you let go of whatever happens, that is the true form of surrender. And when you do that, you're acknowledging that, look, I am powerless, but in a different way, not in the.
Yeah, I love this aspect. Deepak Chopra talks about this power that's already within us, this higher self, and understanding that and connecting with that source. You were talking about that source energy lets us understand that there's a strength beyond our ego. And that's something that you came into realization. My ego at its height is me with a bottle thinking I'm cool. That's the ego. There's this other inner strength that's within me, this higher self where I'm way cooler. I'm in service to others. I'm making courses. I'm making, I'm supporting my family. I'm working from home. Like all the things that you do now, especially in service to others, that's such a higher power than trying to get a bottle and get laid and be cool and go to the dance club, if that makes sense.
Yeah, because in other words, now my energy is rooted in my higher centers, whereas previously my energy was firmly rooted in my lower three centers, specifically the lowest one, the one that talks about that always wants to get laid and, wants to go out and all that stuff. The recognition that my life's purpose likely, I don't know for sure, but likely is to do this kind of work because one person, one mom that I can help who's got three children, those three children will benefit from. So it's like, that's why I do this work the way I do it. And the higher power, it's not some weird woo-woo shit. It's really the fact that when you look at James Webb Telescope, like, what a wonderful thing. Like, it blasted through so many, like the theory of evolution, not so real anymore. They found galaxies where, okay, 13 billion light years away, they found galaxies that have been there for hundreds of thousands, billions of years. So, like, how does that make sense, right? So, there's a lot that we don't know that we are now learning. And I think in the next couple of years, humanity will start to shift. They have already started to shift, but shifting away from the mindset of the 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s. You know what I mean? Work, work, work hard, be strong, be a man, don't cry, blah, blah, blah. Like that entire mentality, it's all going away. People are waking up and realizing that, wait a second, we are not just here to work and die. There is a lot more to this existence. And I just feel glad that I am a part of that whole revolution, if you want to call it that, where people are realizing that there is way more to life than just this.
That's so good. And you had mentioned something in the beginning, and we're wrapping things up. So I want people to understand this, that alcohol has a vibration, and you had talked about there's an energetic vibration and it traps you. And I feel like alcohol has a vibration of like fear, shame, disconnection, all those things. And it's almost like a radio tuning into a radio station. Alcohol becomes that static interference in our soul, our higher self signal.
Yeah.
And if I drink alcohol, I don't have an addiction to alcohol, but if I do drink it, if somebody offers me a beer or something, I feel a lot of time it dulls my energy and it kind of has a lower vibrational state. And maybe for some people that drink wine, it doesn't do this and it's awesome and they can handle it and feel great. What do you feel about the vibration of alcohol in itself? Have you ever gone into that at all or studied it?
100%. I'm so glad that that's like what we're going to end this on. So look, to explain the vibration of alcohol, we have to look at what it is. Alcohol is a neurotoxin, and when it gets broken down in the liver, it releases something called acetaldehyde, which is essentially the toxin that is killing your brain cells or the cells in your body. So the tipsy feeling is the death of our cells, number one. Number two is that alcohol is the only substance that can pass through the blood-brain barrier. There is a little barrier that protects toxins from getting into the brain. Any other chemical, cocaine, heroin, blah, 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 they all attach themselves to the outer layer of the membrane of the cell, whereas alcohol goes right through. Because of that, what it's doing is it's literally slowing down the vibration of the cell. And when we get slurry and can't form words properly and start doing like that, all of that is there's so much alcohol in your system that your cells are just not able to vibrate and exchange information properly. That's literally what it is. So yes, it is significantly lowering your energy. It is also a central nervous system depressant, which is why we feel when we're stressed out or like things are going and all of that. And in addition to this, when we wake up with shame, guilt, worry, all of these emotions, these are also low vibration emotions. Then your image of yourself by repetition goes down, and then you are firmly rooted in low vibration. So yes, alcohol is killing your vibration, and we do it willingly, and we pay for it too. So it is the biggest scam on earth, if you ask me. But that's exactly it, man. That is, you just hit it. So not only are we already primed to live in a low vibration environment, we are using substances that make it even worse. And that is why I love liberating people from it, because then the real magic starts to happen and I get to see it firsthand in my community. So truly am the luckiest person. that I know.
Hamza, I want to get into last question for community. You just mentioned that word, and I think it's so beautiful. And I want us to take, a few minutes and talk about your community, what you have available. Can you kind of go into, because I know we have people listen, we have thousands of people that listen, and I know someone's out there struggling with sobriety. How can they get involved in your community? What are the first steps they can take this spiritual journey with you?
So the very first step is I have a masterclass. I'll share the link with you that you can share in the program notes. It's free. It's on YouTube. Please watch that. It's the best 38 minutes you'll invest into your life. It will explain to you everything that I just talked about, and you'll get a very clear, it'll release dopamine in your brain. You'll finally be like, fuck yeah, I can see why things are the way they are. Let's go. The second step from there is you book a call with me, because my community, the reason why it is so successful is because I want to make sure that anyone that is coming in there is 100% I can help you. If I'm not 100% that I can help solve your problem, then, that's that. Right? So I offer my personal time and my personal guarantee when somebody enrolls into my community, so we have to have a conversation just to make sure that we are both the right fit for each other. Once you are in my community. So I have 3 courses and I'm working on a 4th one right now, specifically for parents. You will immediately start working on your mindset shifts. You will start working on uncovering your triggers, how you're wired. You'll start learning about your nervous system, learning about breath work, and you'll also start practicing basic breathing routines to interrupt your patterns like we talked about on this podcast. I offer, throughout the week, there are calls. There's actually one starting in the next few minutes where we do breathwork on Sundays. There's several other calls throughout the week with me. So there's plenty of help. You can message me anytime. So I support you one-on-one as well. We can have bi-weekly coaching calls as well. And all that stuff that's great. But the main thing is that in the community, you will find people just like yourself, moms and dads, going through life, people who you wouldn't look at and be like, oh, look at that alcoholic. You would never say that, or you would never think that about them only until they tell you how they really feel. And I bet that's you as well.
Mm.
So, if your kids are looking at you and wondering why does mommy get all happy at 8 o'clock at night? If they're asking you questions, if they are seeing you, or if you're feeling that, I know I can't keep going like this, please watch my masterclass, reach out to me, because look, guys, life is short. I don't know what else to tell you. Man, it goes by so quickly, and it's very easy to stay stuck in that same pattern over and over and over and over again. Zoom out a little bit. Look at the last 5, 6 years of your life, 10 years of your life. Tell me if you are genuinely thrilled with everything. If the answer is no, you have the power to change it. Let's do it.
So
Let's
good.
change it.
So good. And, community is a spiritual lifeline, guys. Addiction isolates. If you isolate and you don't get in a connection where healing can happen, you're just going to keep falling for that addiction over and over again. We got all the links below in the show notes. You guys click on those. Be a part of this. This will be awesome. Once again, thank you for being on Higher Density Living podcast today.
Thank you for having me again. It was such a pleasure. I truly, truly, truly appreciate this. It makes me feel good.